Hey y'all, Eli here. I actually had a false start. I just went and talked for like a few minutes and then realized that I wasn't actually live. But today we're going to be talking about the difference between selling on TCGPlayer versus eBay. Many of us sell on both platforms, although I do far more sales on TCGPlayer specifically. And many people looking to sell their cards are always seeking like the best platform to do it on, whether it's fees, ease of use, the type of sellers and buyer relationships that you get on the platforms. And so I wanted to do a video comparing many of the different metrics that we as sellers use to decide where we're going to sell what. Before I begin, I just want to quickly point out that in my last video on buying cards in Japan, I announced a giveaway, and so all you have to do to be entered to win is go on that video, leave a comment of your favorite Japanese Pokemon card. You'll be entered to win a few vending promo cards. They sort of look like this. They're very cool. It's a set of old cards that are Japanese and have several unique designs that never came to America. And they're pretty affordable too if you want to start collecting your own set. So anyway, let's get started. So TCGPlayer and eBay are both places to sell trading cards, although TCGPlayer also do comics, although that's a very small part of the business, and it's pretty much exclusively that, whereas eBay, you're competing all over the place to try to get up the search terms. You're gaming the algorithm, all these things, as if it's an actual search engine, whereas TCGPlayer is more like a store with many vendors. Where you can actually precisely search those sort of cards you want, and it's easier to find what you need frequently. So I sell on both these platforms and have been for a while now. One of the things to note, and this sort of bothers me a bit, is actually eBay bought TCGPlayer. And it may not seem like a huge deal, and there are some benefits that we're hoping are going to happen from this purchase. But one of the big problems, I think, is that now you pretty much have the two largest marketplaces for buying cards, and of course there are other marketplaces too, but these are the two biggest, are able to pretty much use coercion to get whatever rates they want. And so there's nothing to stop eBay and TCGPlayer, because they're now owned by the same company, from next year raising the fees to 20% on trading cards specifically, for example. There's very little that we as sellers could do, because we have few places where we could go with as big of an audience. And so that's definitely something that I'm a little concerned about, is them pretty much working, because it's the same company now, in coercion, to be able to get higher fees out of sellers, which is really concerning, because before they were competitors, and so they had to keep their rates low, because obviously if there's one platform that's huge and another one that's huge, but one of them has much lower fees, I'm going to sell on that platform. But here, you don't really have that choice. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I just wanted to make sure really quick that we're actually live. Yep, we are. All right, great. So the first thing I want to talk about was the fees. Of course, this is a very important part. The TCGPlayer fees. Here's the matrix on the right side, and it's a little difficult to understand. Move my video to make sure you can see it. But pretty much if you start selling on TCGPlayer tomorrow and you're a new seller, then your rate is going to be a set rate of 10.25% plus 2.5% for credit card processing fees plus 30 cents per order, which altogether comes out to pretty much around 13%. This is actually really frustrating. Many of us are really skeptical that the rate of actually processing the payments is 2.5%, because that is high. Many of us do digital sales, PayPal. Yes, it has a fee, but you'd think that if you had a company as big as TCGPlayer, especially now that it's integrated with, bought by eBay, we don't have to pay a credit card processing fee on eBay to take funds out. It goes straight into our bank. And so it's, and when people make a sale, we're not charged on behalf of them actually buying a product from us. So it's deeply frustrating. I mean, there's a final value fee or whatever. It's something like 30 cents per item. I wouldn't mind that per order, but it is deeply, deeply frustrating that we're charged on this, pretty much this credit card processing fee, when it seems really unnecessary, when eBay doesn't need that. But pretty much altogether, you're looking at around 13% there of your fee. If you are on TCGPlayer Pro, which is pretty much this upgraded version of TCGPlayer, which gives you several new features I'll talk about later, some of them, but it's pretty much a big improvement. Then the fee is about 14.5%, and this is super weird why they do this, but pretty much your fee on the actual use of the platform goes down by 1%, but your fee to use the Pro program is 2.5%, so it pretty much cancels out, and you end up going about 1.5% higher than the regular selling rate. So 14.5% if you eventually opt into Pro. I think that actual extra 1.5% of fees that you pay is worth it, and so I'm a Pro seller. And then finally, you have Direct. And Direct is the program where pretty much you list your cards on the platform. They sell, and then you pretty much send your cards to reimburse TCGPlayer. TCGPlayer ships all your orders for you, and once every week or two, you just pretty much put together 1,000 cards and ship them off to TCGPlayer, everything that was purchased from you. I did a video, sort of an extensive video on TCGPlayer Direct a little while ago. You can find it in my videos. But pretty much for people who have cheap cards, it's really, in my view, not worth doing unless you have a very, very large-scale operation. Because the fees on cheap cards, pretty much everything under 30%, you're paying 50% fees. Plus, you have to actually ship the items to get there. So it ends up being even more than 50% of fees. And sometimes when you sell cards at around $3.25 or so, you're paying more than 50% fees, even like higher than that. So the fees are very, very high on the low-end items. Once you get to items that are more than $8, $10, like cards like that, Direct becomes more worthy and easier to deal with because you don't have to ship each order. So if you're a seller that exclusively sells cards that are like, more than $6 or $7, Direct might be for you. And so that's where you can get sort of the 15%, 16% rates. But it's highly variable because the amount you pay overall, like it's misleading. On this chart over here, it tells you that the rate for direct seller is only 9%, 8.95%, but that's misleading because you also have to pay what's called a shipping replacement cost. So they pretty much charge you to ship the item, and that with tracking, that can frequently be expensive, and that's why your rates on items end up being frequently much, much higher than 15%, and sometimes as high as 50% on what you're selling. So the chart there on Direct is pretty misleading, and I personally do not think it's a great deal. And that's why I opted out after participating for 2 or 3 months. But anyway, those are the fees there. On eBay, the fees are similar, actually, in the sense that your usual rate is 13.25%, which is comparable to TCGPlayer's 13%. But if you're a top-rated seller, and I actually just attained top seller status recently, and you have a handling time of 1 day, then you have about 10% off your direct your overall fees. So it ends up being about 12%, which is a little cheaper than TCGPlayer, and it can come in handy on those cards, especially since you get tracking on plain white envelopes, which I'll talk about later at eBay. Certainly, if your cards are selling between $8 and $15, $8 and $20, then I think you'd save a lot in fees if you're a top-rated seller deciding to hop to eBay instead, and that might work for some people. So those are the fees. Now we're going to talk about shipping, okay? On TCGPlayer, if you, once you become a level 4 seller, which is just like this process you have to go through to get all your full selling rights on TCGPlayer after you pretty much ship 50 orders, you can set your shipping to free shipping on orders above $5. Pretty much everyone does this because the way they order cards in terms of cost, they account shipping in. So it's sort of misleading. So for example, if a buyer sorts cards by like cheapest, frequently it'll assume that if you have shipping added, it adds it into the actual cost of the item. So if you offer free shipping, you pretty much get bumped up the algorithm or up the sort of list of cards, which makes it more visible. So the vast majority of sellers offer free shipping after $5. And so presumably if you use this platform, you would too. Theoretically, you could set it to a different level too. It's totally up to you, but we've been successful at free shipping on above $5. The big downside of TCGPlayer is that pretty much on all raw singles, you have to set the same price. You can't have variable shipping. And this is super annoying for people that do bulk, sometimes because you have someone who orders, say, 50 cards, right? Which costs more to ship, because if you buy 1 card, up to 8 cards, I'm going to spend, just for 1 stamp and then 2 stamps, whatever. But if you order 50, 100 cards for me, I'm going to have to spend a lot more money to ship the cards. And when you're selling bulk and the cards are worth 5 cents, 10 cents, then it quickly eats into your margin. So this is a huge disadvantage of using TCGPlayer, because ideally you'd be able to have variable rate. If it were up to me, I'd say, if you buy more than 10 cards, I add 20 cents for shipping. If you buy more than 50 cards, I'll add, $1.50. I don't know. But unfortunately, you cannot do that. But one of the big benefits here is actually any order under $5, this buyer has to pay an extra $1 for shipping no matter what. Even if you have free shipping enabled, the buyer will pay an extra $1 on orders under $5, and that's a huge benefit because a lot of the sales that I do with bulk, I would say probably I don't know, at this point, probably 70% of the sales I do are under $5. So that's just a bonus to cover your shipping. It's not even free shipping. And because I got my shipping costs so down so much frequently, I actually make a little bit of money, a few cents on every order I ship, which is super nice because it inflates your margins. Obviously, if I'm spending 3 cents on a card to ship it out and I make an extra 15 cents off my shipping there, then that's a huge margin there. The only downside there is that actually, since on every order you have to pay a 30-cent processing fee, that's part of the fees. Pretty much out of $1 they pay you 30 cents go to the processing fee. So it's a little misleading. You don't really get $1. You're really getting like 70 cents because 30 cents of that is getting taken for the processing fee anyway. Another thing, you're required to have tracking if over $50. And the big benefit of TCGPlayer is that buyers are used to plain white envelopes. So I ship the vast majority of my items without tracking on TCGPlayer. Almost everything under $50 I ship without tracking, and people are used to it. I don't want to jinx myself, but I've had very few problems. People sometimes, on occasion, people complain about the way an item was shipped. It was in an envelope, in a top loader. It happens. People sometimes complain, but it's rare. The vast majority of people I sell to are totally okay and totally used to receiving a card in a regular envelope without tracking, without extra, crap. So that's a huge benefit, because eBay, conversely, also has pros and cons. The big benefit of eBay is that they have plain white envelope tracking. So it's cheap. It's 60 cents or whatever, 90 cents, depending on how heavy your item is. But it literally tracks every single order, which is awesome. Just to have that security. In fact, like on TCGPlayer, we don't have very many items that get lost. It's rare, okay? So we're okay with not having tracking most of the time. But, every so often something gets lost. And it's really nice on eBay that you always have the peace of mind, and the buyer always has the peace of mind. So they always know that there's something getting tracked, which is a huge benefit. The only problem there is, of course, that it only applies to cards worth less than $20. So on TCGPlayer, I'll actually ship cards worth over $20 in a PWE frequently, and you can't do that on eBay. On eBay, you have to pay the full, like $4 or whatever to ship it tracked if it's more than $20. So that's a downside there. Also, eBay buyers are just less accustomed to plain white envelopes. My rate of complaints there is just higher, even though I do fewer sales there. People are just not used to it. But one of the big benefits about eBay is that, every item you can price shipping differently. And this is a huge sort of, oh, my face is covering up there. Sorry about that. This is a huge benefit because, TCGPlayer, it's the same rate everywhere. And on eBay, charge whatever you want. And that's one of the ways you can also stay competitive, right? Because if someone's offering free shipping, then I can offer free shipping too on eBay and sort of undercut the next lowest listing. And the other big benefit is that I don't ship internationally on TCGPlayer. I think there's a way to do it, but it's complicated, and I've never dealt with it, and I don't really need to. On eBay, the international market's a big deal, and they handle everything for you, and it's very easy to ship internationally. It's a big benefit of eBay. All right, next up, we're going to cover the customers. The best part, most of the time, hopefully. There's a lot of complaints about customers, especially on TCGPlayer. People complain, and I do understand this. I actually am surprised, because I think the customers on TCGPlayer are generally, though not always, are generally great. Okay, they're understanding, they're patient, they work with you, they don't automatically leave a 1-star review, which, by the way, is better. Like, if you automatically leave a 1-star review, I'm just going to meet the sort of the bare minimums of TCGPlayer to, fulfill whatever's wrong. If you send me a message first and don't leave a negative review first, I usually work with people, and I will give them, a refund that's more, or a discount more than what I would otherwise be required to do. Because, I appreciate the fact that you reach out to me to figure out problems before complaining with a 1-star review. Because obviously we like to make things right. So those are great things with people on TCGPlayer. The other great thing is that you can sort of build up a reputation. eBay has so many sellers and so many weird-ass usernames. You go and buy an item, and it's like, the username is like FB650, right? And you're like, who is this person? It's much easier, I think, on TCGPlayer to build up some amount of brand loyalty. Still, it's a marketplace with lots of sellers, but there are fewer sellers, and most of the sellers have some sort of actual business identity. So we do have repeat buyers. We have people who know who we are, and it's because they'll go and they'll see Mile High Pokemon and pick up the card, and so that's a huge benefit there on TCGPlayer versus eBay. And then the other thing, of course, is that on TCGPlayer is that you're always going to be around market price because, of course, there are people who seek out especially good deals. There are new sellers, but if you are an established seller and you price around market price, that's what buyers are going to be looking to buy, and that's around where you're going to sell. Although there's variation pricing strategies, I'll talk about that probably in a different video, but they're accustomed to buying cheap cards. On eBay, what I found is that people are just like less patient. It's a large marketplace. It's easier to get lost in the mix. People are wary about getting cards in a plain white envelope frequently, or get antsy. They complain if something's like not 100% perfectly packaged. Even if there's no damage, some people complain. The other big thing is there's less consistency, and this is both a pro and a con. So many times on eBay, I'll see like there's a market price on TCGPlayer, and most cards sell around there. But on eBay, you'll have prices all over the place, and you'll have some prices that go low or auctions that end much lower. And likewise, you'll have auctions that end much higher, so there's not a reliability. And so, of course, sometimes you're going to sell on eBay and get 20% higher than the last person who sold there, and that's really nice, but it goes the other way too. And so I think TCGPlayer has a consistency that eBay doesn't. Of course, if you're a big seller on eBay and you think the algorithm is going to, be in your favor, then you might get more money from customers on eBay. And, of course, there's some amount of gaming the algorithm on eBay, which I'll talk about later, which also comes into account. Of course, the big thing, too, is there's an international market on eBay that doesn't really exist on TCGPlayer. So in terms of an audience, there's just like a larger base of customers, right? Not just in America, but worldwide. Next up, we're going to cover listing and pricing. So to me, and people have figured out different ways to do this on eBay, but to me, it's far easier to list and price on TCGPlayer, and it's like not even particularly close. The biggest thing is that TCGPlayer will tell you what market price is, what the low price is, and all these things. So you can actually price, sorry, just trying to get my face out of the way of these facts. So, you can actually price compared to the market. And so it's very easy to just set to market price. It's one button press on TCGPlayer, and that's it. You're done. You don't have to individually go listing by listing, trying to be competitive, trying to beat everyone else. You don't have to do that on TCGPlayer. That's a huge benefit. There's also, if you become a TCGPlayer Direct or TCGPlayer Pro vendor, then it gives you a tool called Mass Price and Quick List. Mass Price pretty much lets you set rules and price all your items. So, for example, I have a rule where I set all my cards worth between 50 cents and $4.50. I set them all at market price plus 10%. All my cards that are worth under 30 cents, I put at market price. All my cards over $5, I put it like market price plus 3% or whatever. So you're able to mass price thousands of items. I have 35,000 items listed frequently on TCGPlayer. I can do it all with a press of a button and reprice everything against market prices, which is phenomenal, right? You can't do that on eBay. eBay obviously has sophisticated marketing, like price research tools, which people use, but that's more of an individualized item by item endeavor, and you don't have this one button click fix out all the prices on everything you list sort of functionality on eBay. So it's much easier if you're doing mass sales, if you're doing bulk sales on TCGPlayer to do all that. And then you also have quick lists on TCGPlayer. So many people, hey Card Palace, thanks for coming by. I'm just talking about here the differences between TCGPlayer and eBay, which is I don't know if you sell on either one, but quick list is the functionality if you're on TCGPlayer Pro that literally lets you scan in cards with a camera, and it works very well and very fast and automatically sets it to market price. So on eBay, when I'm listing cards and trying to find comparable sales, usually find the card in another listing, and then you'll click sell similar. You'll set up a listing based off this other listing that already exists, right? With Quick List, I literally can get hundreds of cards listed very quickly, just one at a time in front of the camera. And it makes listing far, far easier going to this universal database versus eBay, where it's cumbersome. Now, of course, on eBay, you can use spreadsheet functionality, and on TCGPlayer, you can too. But it requires more work. It's more cumbersome. You don't have the scanning functionality on eBay. So if you have a lot of cards you're selling, TCGPlayer, especially low-cost cards, is the way to go. And eBay, in this both the pro and a con, has this algorithm you sort of have to learn and through intuition figure out, right? Because on eBay, I've heard, and I didn't know this before 2 months ago, that if you list cards every single day, your cards will perform better and you'll get a boost in the algorithm just like listing them all at once and just like having them sit. And that's weird, okay? And you've got to come up with specific, words, keywords that will track in the algorithm and pick up when people are searching your item. You don't have to do that in TCG Player. It automatically hooks up to the item you want. People look for it and they'll find all the listings ordered however they want them to be ordered, right? By price or by reputation, whatever. eBay doesn't have that. I mean, they have these metrics in the back end that you don't 100% know on how items are getting sorted, and you just sort of have to figure it out. And there's sort of guides you can follow, but I don't want to have a system that I have to learn how to game in order to sell my items and get people to see my items. And that's unfortunate. So that's a huge benefit of TCG Player too. Although if you learn the algorithm, maybe good for you that eBay will work better. The other thing, though, that's beneficial about eBay is, first off, it's very difficult to sell Japanese and other international cards on TCG Player. It just doesn't get visibility, and most people on there are looking for English cards, so eBay is a better place for that. And obviously slabs too, eBay is a better place for. You've got far more listings, far more buyers on there for those sorts of expensive cards. That's not to say selling slabs on TCG Player is impossible, because I have sold slabs before on certain cards. It works better. For example, a few recent slabs I sold on TCG Player were like Grookey on the ball, right? Where an Eevee on the ball. These were cards that were sort of rare, where they were selling on TCG Player for a high price. You could get Eevee on the ball for like $75 raw on TCG Player, which was very expensive. You can get them much cheaper on eBay. And I had a few like PSA 9s, PSA 8s that would not sell very well on eBay, and so I put them on TCG Player at $60, right, which was sort of higher than you get on eBay, and they sold no problem. So for certain cards, selling slabs can be good on TCG Player, but that is not a common thing, and certainly slabs, international cards are better on eBay. And the other big thing on eBay is that if you're the type of person to do this, you can pay to promote your item, right? You can't do that on TCG Player. So on eBay, frequently, if you've got a card, you can pay a certain amount of percentage points, usually around 6%, 7% of fees, which is inconvenient, but you can do that to get your item boosted. And so we know a lot of people in our community who pay to boost items, who will literally sell an item for 50% higher, and then pay an extra 10% in fees, and it works out better for them. And that doesn't work on TCG Player. This especially works on cards that are sort of low value, because I've had success doing this strategy with staples. So, for example, you have someone needs 4 of a 50-cent card for their deck, right? And so on TCG Player, they'd be selling for 50 cents. What I've done before is I've listed 4 cards for $5 on eBay and paid to promote it. And someone looking to buy 4 of the same trainer card will see it pop up right at the top. $5, you get the cards you need, and that's it. So that's sort of a big benefit of eBay with the promotion, which doesn't exist on TCG Player. There you go. And then the next thing we've got is buyer feedback. This one's sort of short, and I actually don't have nearly as much experience with buyer feedback on eBay as I do on TCG Player. But a huge benefit of TCG Player is that you can get unreasonable feedback removed. So it doesn't happen that frequently. Probably 1 in about 100 orders, 1 in every 300 orders, something like that. Someone will leave a piece of negative feedback. With varying levels of legitimacy in terms of reasonableness, right? Most of the time they didn't reach out to me first. They just leave the negative feedback, and then I have to reach out and trying to fix the problem. But the vast majority of the time, as long as you make some amends, TCG Player is going to remove the feedback if you were not unreasonable. So what does this entail? Well, it means sometimes someone will complain about a card condition. This is very rare, but sometimes a card arrives and it's not near mint, right? And we sell thousands of cards. We can't 100% track everything. So what I usually do is I'll assess some amount of a refund. Usually, if it's a cheap card, for example, the card's like 30 cents, I will give them a 30% discount on the card, and that is enough for TCG Player. That's bigger actually than what they require, and they will remove the feedback for me. Recently, I've had several buyers who've left feedback. This is sort of unreasonable, but from cards that curve in transit. So something that happens frequently when you come from a cold, dry climate like Colorado, and it moves into a humid climate, is the cards sort of expand and curl into themselves, so they'll arrive a little curved. And as we all know, you can uncurve a card by putting just like a book on top, right? It'll straighten out. Or, I mean, to the point where even if you send sort of a curve card at PSA, you're not going to get penalized. You can still get a PSA 10 with a curve card under TCG Player's conditioning official guidelines. It's still near mint if it's got a bit of a curve. So first off, it's not really our fault, but also it happens in transit, but also it's still near mint even if it was our fault, right? And so we had an increase in buyers, especially after cold spells that we have here in ship out items that complain about curved cards. The vast majority of the time, we don't have to do a refund or anything. We simply explain to the buyer, hey, here's what happened. Here's a curved card. Let me tell you about the conditioning guidelines. We do all that. And then usually we'll say, hey, although if this isn't the issue, if we, card became damaged or creased or whatever, we're happy to issue a refund. Just please send a picture of it to our email address. And once in a while, they'll send a picture, and yes, it'll be curved. And far more often, they won't respond at all. And in these cases, TCG Player automatically removes the feedback because there's no problem with actual conditioning of the card. So in virtually all these cases, we've been able to get feedback removed. From what I understand on eBay, you can also get feedback removed. I don't know what the barrier is. People have said that if a buyer is being unreasonable, they generally, without difficulty, can get feedback removed. That's negative, but I'm not sure how far this goes, if it's as strong of protection as TCG Player is. The other thing about eBay is that most eBay sellers just have fewer sales there because they sell higher value cards, whereas the bulk they'll put on TCG Player. And so as a result, if you get a negative feedback on eBay and you can't get it removed, it's going to have a higher impact on your selling, whereas for us, on TCG Player, if we have a negative feedback and we can't get it removed, although we've been able to get everything removed, if you're not able to get removed, we have so many sales now, 5,000 in total. Every month we'll have 1,000 sales or whatnot. It just means it's just like far less of an impact if you get a negative review. So that's a big benefit there of a TCG Player. So overall, as I mentioned, for us, TCG Player on most items, not all of them, but TCG Player is the better place to go because we sell a lot of bulk. Buyers are used to receiving plain white envelopes. They're used to receiving non-tracked stuff. They're used to, they're able to bundle a bunch of cards together from various sellers and just check out with, as many cards as they need. Whereas in eBay, you have to go listing by listing, right, which is much more difficult. And you're able to get unreasonable feedback removed, and you're able to list easier, you're able to price easier. I've got all these tools, right? So for us, TCG Player is better. eBay is certainly better for having the international market. If you're selling Japanese cards, if you're selling slabs, you got tracked plain white envelope, which is a huge deal. It's like a huge advantage of eBay versus TCG Player. And then you're able to promote listings, which is a huge deal too for many sellers. But overall, eBay I think is better for people that are selling cards, particularly between $8 and $20, so you can use PWE. eBay is better for slabs and international cards. eBay is better for more expensive cards generally, I think, for listing and visibility. But I think in most other cases, if you got low value cards, if you got crap ton of cards, if you want sophisticated pricing tools, if you want buyers that are generally, I would say, more reasonable, TCG Player is the place to go, and that's why we do the vast majority of our sales there. So if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer those now. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment. I'd be happy to answer those after the video is posted. Thanks all for watching, and have a great night.